I think to start with, you want to understand why people suffer from lack of vulnerability, or why do we find that vulnerability becomes a problem. And I think one of the reasons is that people, a lot of Bachrim and young people, think that their acceptability and their ability to be loved and worthy is totally on their kiyum ha-mitzvahs, is dependent on their fulfillment of mitzvahs. And when they don't live up to the standard that they feel that the culture expects from them, even if they're living it like that on the outside, if they feel like on the inside they're missing that, that can lead to shame, and that can lead to walls being put up between them and other people, because they're afraid that other people see them, quote unquote, for who they really are, which is someone who's not as perfect as the image they put on. I think what Chassidus can tell you something very powerful is that the Nekuda of Yisrael, Kadma LaTorah, the idea that our connection to Hashem is absolute, and it's not going to be compromised by our fulfillment or non-fulfillment of mitzvahs. I think this is something that you chazer many times, the famous story about the boy and the milk, right? I am yours, right? So that idea where whether or not we are perfect or imperfect, we're always Hashem's, so to speak. So obviously we have to bavarn that kiyum mitzvahs is important and limud Torah is important, but to recognize that our essential value is never compromised, and we always have that bechina of yichida, where we're connected to Hashem on that level.
So that allows you to be intimate.
That allows you to take.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, it allows you to be you, right? There's nothing to hide, right? We're allowed to be imperfect.
And that's vulnerable.
I think so, yeah.
Now, why should you be vulnerable?
Because it takes a lot of effort to put up a mask and to be hiding all the time. You're happier when you're happy with yourself. When you're able to accept yourself, you're a happier person. You're a more content person. You're more brave because you're not afraid of putting yourself out there. Let's say you have an artist who is afraid that people are going to see her work and not accept it. Will think that it's not good. So someone who's vulnerable will say, I'm enough. I don't need to conform to any. I'm going to put it out there, so you're more creative. It opens up a lot of good things. And another thing I pointed out was how it's also connected with what the Rebbe's Taich and Dir B'Tachtenim. The Rebbe explains that Dir B'Tachtenim is not only Tachtenim in the world, but also Tachtenim in every Yid. And the Rebbe points on one Sikha where that not only within Yidden, but in the Tachtenim of the Yid itself, where the Taich that I understood was that it's referring to even the parts of you that you consider your imperfections. Hashem, the dir happens also there. So coming to Hashem with vulnerability and saying, I'm here completely, there's nothing, I'm here fully, is another nekuda of vulnerability.
And this woman wrote a book, and she said she doesn't want to put her name on it because it's arrogant. I said, no, it's not. It's humble. If somebody finds something wrong with the book, they'll know who to criticize. Mm-hmm. So put your name on it. Be brave. That is all true. Well, let's consider another thing. Not the benefits of vulnerability, but the need for it. The need essentially, objectively. And if you really want to go to the extreme, in what way is the Eibishter vulnerable? Because if vulnerability is a virtue, then he must have it too. In fact, he must have it infinitely. So how would we describe his vulnerability? To be brave and show his faults?
No. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's a level or a dimension of vulnerability that has nothing to do with embarrassment or faults. There's an inherent vulnerability in the sense that no human being is enough for himself. I'm not enough. It's not because I'm a failure, but for whatever strange, mysterious reason, even if I'm not a failure, just me, not enough. And if I can admit that, that's my vulnerability. So I'm basically saying, I'm really good, I have nothing to apologize for, and I have nothing to be ashamed of, but I need you to be in my life also. Because just me, it's like the idea of Kishani la'atzmi mo'ani. What's wrong with, what do you mean mo'ani? Work on yourself, make yourself perfect, be everything you can be, and that's it, and you're good. Let's say Kishani la'atzmi mo'ani. Whatever you make yourself, what's wrong with being alone? Right? So this is, I think, another dimension. The feeling of being alone is, for a human being, terrible. For no reason. I'm not afraid, I don't need protection, but alone feels wrong. Not embarrassing, just not right. As if I'm not enough. That's vulnerable. In other words, the need for another person in your life.
So so it's recognizing that you're not the be all end all. You recognize it's the recognition that I need something from someone else. That's vulnerability.
Yeah, not something. I don't need anything from you.
Right. But there's something.
But to be only me,
mm-hmm.
And there's no explanation for it. It's just essentially be'emes, not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. So someone who wasn't vulnerable would say, "I'm okay. I mean, I'm not going to reveal that I'm needy, because being needy seems to be a weakness."
Right.
So the admission of I need someone is a vulnerable admission.
And what we're hearing from a lot of people these days, like especially young kids, teenagers, I don't care. I don't need you. I don't need anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so not true. You don't need anything. If that were true, I would be very impressed. Because that's a mensch. You don't need anything. Sameach becholkei. That's wonderful. But you don't need anyone. Now you're an animal.
Mm.
Then it's not a mila at all. So,
what do you think is the mucker? Where do you think this idea comes from?
the need
mm-hmm.
from the Eibishter.
Mm-hmm. Because Hashem has
that.
Mm-hmm.
And we are created in His image, so we also have that. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that not long ago, and I decided to look it up. What do the Mefarshim say about that?
About that pasuk.
Yeah. Because my question was, why does Vayomer Elikim Lo Tov? Why do you have to say it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough for that. You have to create Chava.
Mm-hmm.
So create Chava. What are you making statements for?
Mm-hmm.
What's with the statement?
Right.
Right. The Eibishter created the moon and he created the sun. He didn't say
it's not good for the world to be dark. Let me create the sun.
Yeah. Or it's not enough with the sun. You have to have the moon.
Right.
Fine. You need the moon, so create the moon.
Right. Interesting.
You know,
It's a good question.
Yeah, and it never occurred to me before. And now I look it up. So the Medrash says that these words, Lo Tov Heyes Ha'adam Levada, is one of the Aseret Meimores.
Wow.
with which the world was created.
Hmm.
Which means that the Eibishter created that condition that loy teiv.
Wow.
He gave it into nature. He put it into nature. That it's not enough to be yourself. Now that's something beyond modern psychology. So why do you need to be vulnerable in this sense of vulnerability? Because it's emes.
It is created as part of the human condition to need other people. And how would you describe that need? How does that need manifest itself?
Right, so in order to get there, like people would be afraid of that. But that's because we're self-conscious. The way to get to this true vulnerability is to not be self-conscious. If it's not about you, like vulnerability comes from strength, not from weakness, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the strength that is necessary to be vulnerable? Humility.
Mm-hmm.
Humility is powerful. If it's not about me, then I'm completely
Then I'm able to be vulnerable.
right.
Yeah.
I don't need to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
So in any case where I feel any need to protect myself, even if I overcome it, I say, no, I'm fine. I can afford this. But I'm still being cautious. I have to make a cheshbon. How vulnerable can I be depends on how secure I am in my value. But it's always like a cheshbon. It's always, we're always on guard. And, it's like, am I getting too vulnerable for my, am I
sharing too much?
Am I secure enough to be this vulnerable?
Yeah.
But if it's not even about me, then there's no issue. There's no...
Right. I feel like that's something that you mention a lot in regards to self-esteem, etc., where if a person's living a God-oriented life, where every second he's asking himself, what does the Eibishter want from me at this moment, then a lot of the issues go away. I just want to say I find that it's a tall order. I mean, obviously what this demands from us, but I think a lot of times the in between gets lost. So a person says, I'm not holding there yet. I'm not ready to totally have Kabbalah soil and give up my whole life to the Eibishter. Halavai, we should all. But I also feel like there can be also
Yes, yeah.
there, where
Stages.
yes.
But in this level of vulnerability, it doesn't feel like I'm giving up my whole life, because that's of no value. If it's not about me, what am I giving up? My whole life, which amounts to basically nothing.
Mm-hmm. It's not even. There's no cheshbon.
There's no sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not big of me. It's not an avodah in that sense. And that's why the Rebbe always quoted Ani lo nevresi elo l'sham. So I'm not really giving up anything, because
Ani lo nevresi.
Lekach, don't hold yourself about learning a lot of...
Yeah.
So what are you? You gave up something? No, this is just a fact. Just don't get in the way, Don't patch up the reality of...
That's the difference between, it says, V'yisvu anavim ba'yasimcha, the idea where if you feel like you deserve something. I heard a beautiful vart before Purim. The difference between Haman and Mordechai is that Haman had the entire Shar HaMelech bowing down to him except one person, and he probably couldn't sleep at night. Everything's going right for you, but if one thing's going wrong in your life, you can't handle it. Mordechai represents the Messiah of Bittul all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, and for him was the opposite. Everything could be going wrong in his life, but if one thing's going right, he's b'simcha. So that nekuda where it's about entitlement. If we don't feel like we deserve anything, because again, ani lo nivresi, then taka, every good thing that happens to us is the greatest simcha in the world, because I don't deserve to be alive. I don't even deserve.
And it's without a struggle.
Yeah. So again, this is something we should all strive towards.
And I think it's timely. I don't know if you saw the reaction to your article is People are so interested and so desperate, actually, to get past their self-consciousness, because it's so uncomfortable. And you try, you become a little more humble, a little less humble, and it's a full-time job. It's like exhausting.
Absolutely.
What about me? What about me? No, forget about me. I'm not, no, but it's like a can of worms you can't get out of. You can't get in, you can't get out. It's like, it's misery.
My Shpia of mine once told me, he's like, you're spending so much time on that. Like, imagine you just focus on so many more important things.
Yeah. So now let's go back to the Eibishter's vulnerability. In what way is the Eibishter vulnerable? That he'll show his faults. Is that he's not afraid to say, I am the Eibishter, I'm Bli Gvul, and I'm Ein Sof, and I'm Ko Yochel, and I'm... But it's not enough. If we could somehow make this conversation I don't know, acceptable or palatable, why is it that in everything else we're so comfortable saying, well, what now? Le machshavei say, well, what do I know? Compared to the Eibishter, what...
I think the main struggle is there seems to be a lot of sources in Yiddishkeit that do ascribe perfection to the Eibishter and say that you can't say, like we have like the Rambam and Kabbalah and Chassidus, like I think the job, what am I to say, but like is to kind of sift through a lot of these sources and explain them based on the Rebbe's Torah, or find more makers in the Rebbe's Torah for these. And I think that can be important, because I think that's what stops a lot of people, because they're just afraid that these ideas aren't authentic. That's all. Yoni and I.
Oh, you've been through it. Okay.
I don't know. I don't have an opinion. I'm not going to say either way. But
no, what you were saying. Why is it in every other area?
Yeah. I mean, sticking to your topic of choice. Why is it when it comes to vulnerability, we don't attribute it to the Eibishter as having more than we have? So part of it is because we think vulnerability is a weakness.
Mm.
So of course you can't apply it to the Eibishter.
Mm-hmm.
But once you discover that it's not a weakness, no, so where's the Eibishter's?
Mm-hmm.
So we do say, I don't know if anybody takes it literally or seriously, B'mokim shata meitza gedulase, shamata meitza anvas. What, the Eibishter is humble? Like we think humble is also a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't say the Eibishter has a weakness, he's humble. Is he?
Is he humble?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It doesn't mean literally. Kivayachol.
I mean, I don't know. I know Tanya over there talks about how he was mitzam, Perik Dalet, he was mitzamtzim his Torah into physical. Right. So, how would you understand the Eibishter's humility? What do you?
Well, the Alter Rebbe actually says, and not in a hint, but in an argument, the Eibishter gives up his Giluyim and his and the higher worlds and Atzilus, and he gives it all up in order to have you. Can't you give up a little bit of your tithe in order to?
Yeah.
So, are we actually comparing? I mean, if I give up my tithes, I'm giving up. I'm suffering. The Eibishter gives up. What, he gave up something. It bothers him. It cost him what? So what? It's like a kal v'chomer.
Mm-hmm.
If he can give up everything he gives up, how can you not? But he doesn't give up anything, does he? I mean, really?
Right. For the Eibishter, it's so simple.
It's so simple. So where's the kal v'chomer?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not taking the Alter Rebbe seriously when it comes to that. Does the Eibishter really give up So here's an interesting way of thinking about it. And it's a little risky. You say to somebody, there's nothing in the world, there can't be anything in creation that doesn't exist in the Creator. Because then where did it come from? So I said this once, and this boy said, you mean the Eibishter sins? That was a good question.
Right. Eibishter is evil or whatever. Same, different iterations of the same question, yeah.
Human beings can sin, the Eibishter can't. Then where did it come from? What is the origin of our sin, if it's not bedakos, at least, in the Eibishter? What does it mean to sin? It means to do something against his will. Neged haratzon, right? Does the Eibishter do anything against his own will? Are you kidding? Tzimtzum Harishon, all the other tzimtzumim, hestepanim, creating evil, creating sin, creating golus.
So we call that chitzonius eratzin or bechinas acharayim.
Right. So his pnimius haratzon goes against his chitzonius haratzon. So he does things against his will? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gimel dvarim HaKadosh Baruch Hu mischaret aleihem b'chol yom. Who did that to him? He did it to himself. So yes, he does things against his own will. And why does he do it? For the kavanah. So the kavanah is more important to him than his ratzon.
Mm-hmm. Although you can say that the kavanah is a deeper ratzon.
Right. But that makes it confusing. He wants against his want. Yeah, but this is a bigger want, a little want.
There's a famous mashal I may have even heard from you about, someone who's on a diet and he sees a hamburger, so he wants the hamburger, but what he really wants is to look good, and you can't have both, so you have to be able to sacrifice the chitzonius haratzin to be mekayim the pnimius haratzin. So essentially, it's all one ratzin. But
except if it's all ratzin, then the struggle is very intense and painful. But I want it.
mm-hmm.
I don't want it, but I do want it.
Mm-hmm.
It's torture, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you change it, I want to eat, but I have to diet. So once the doctor says, you eat this, you're going to die, all of a sudden it's not rotzen against rotzen. It becomes like absolute something against only a rotzen. So all of a sudden there's no struggle.
Mm-hmm.
When the doctor shows you the X-ray of your lungs, that's
you have
it.
to stop smoking.
You don't smoke anymore.
Right.
Because now it's not I want to stop smoking,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to be healthy. Now it's like it's not a choice anymore. So by the Eibishter also, you can't say it was like a struggle and it's like torture for him to be half and half. The kavanah is so necessary or absolute that the ratzon has to take a second. So we think of the Eibishter as like he has no investment in this. Nothing will ever cost him anything. To him, it's all the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wants you to do this, he wants you to do that. But how does his want, ratzon, compare to my need? So if I think of it that way, he wants me to keep Shabbos, but I need to work on Shabbos.
Mm.
Then what's the question? Of course I'm going to work. Because need is always stronger than will. So if you give up...
Is need just another word for ratzon, just stronger?
Yeah, but it's a completely different...
Another thing is, I'll bring it up, a lot of people also confuse get confused when they hear the word need, right? Because Chassidus talks about misava Kadosh Baruch Hu. So a taiva is just a very strong ratzon. I understand why you use the word need. It's very important to bavarn that when we talk about need, we don't mean like we need ear to survive, and the Eibusher needs us to exist. No,
Very good.
it's a very strong ratzon. It's a taiva,
Yeah,
and it comes from the deepest place within the Eibusher.
which means not negotiable.
Right.
The problem with saying want is that it sounds negotiable.
But was there a moment like when we talk about how this is I think an idea that talks about it. I think it's in Samach Vav. The Ramak said that Atzmos is Ratzin, right? That Keser is Ratzin, and the Arizal is B'Chadish that there's a level of Atzmos that's higher than Keser. So does that not mean that there's a moment where the Eibusher exists without the Taiva? So then what instigated the Taiva? I don't know if I'm asking a coherent question.
I think the opposite. What the Arizal is saying is that there's an Eibishter before there's a Ratzon.
Which means that there's a choice for the Eibishter to have that Taiva.
Yes and no. If it's above Ratzon, then what is it?
It's a very strong Ratzon. No, in other words, there's Atzmos, which in Atzmos there is no Ratzon, and then
No Ratzon.
no Taiva, and then Atzmos has a Taiva. At a certain point, Taiva began after Atzmos. No?
No.
There's a Taiva with the Taiva is
Yeah, that's the whole point. So the word need,
so the word Keser is not a good. So I mean, if we're dividing Keser into Atik and Araf, so Atik is miyusad in Atzmos, like one with Atzmos, or it starts. Okay.
but don't use the word Atzmos like some kind of a madrega. Atzmos means him.
But he wants, or
Yes.
he chose to want, or not.
Yes. And if he chooses to want, then obviously there's no option.
Right.
So the word choice there does not mean option. It means voluntary. Like nobody forced him. But there couldn't be any other way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the danger of using the word rotzen, because it sounds like why would anybody say, he doesn't really need it, he just wants it. Just wants it. In other words, if it doesn't happen...
Right. So why... Mm-hmm. So you're saying that the Eibishter couldn't have decided not to...
That's right.
Really? So what is the Nekuda there? Why? What does that mean?
That's him.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much him.
But that's already that's a tier. You're being higher the Eibishter. You're limiting him to a certain
What?
choice, I guess. If we talk about Bechira Chavshis, it means that the Eibishter had every option available and he decided to choose one.
Which shows... No? Complete the
Right.
thought.
You're saying which shows that it must have been something that...
So a better word than need. You're right. The word is... A better word is essential. Essential, essence, right? But nobody knows what that means.
Mm.
So there is a problem with the word need, but there's also a problem with the word rotzen,
Right.
because it makes it sound like it's optional.
Mm-hmm.
So the Eibishter could have chosen somebody else, not Yidden.
Mm-hmm.
Ata b'chatanu. Oh, so you chose us, but it could have been somebody else. That's mamish, dangerous. The Eibishter chooses mitzvahs over Avedas. Yeah, you mean he could have chosen Avedas?
I don't know. You tell
No,
me.
of course not. Chas v'shalom. Och Esav liYankiv. He could have chosen Esav over Yankiv.
This is,
Mordechai and Haman.
these are all in Mamarim of Purim, yeah, the Bechina of Geirel.
So here's
But I
what,
think that's the whole chiddush of those moments. Okay, yeah.
where people get confused is they think that Bechira Chavshis means many options, infinite options. Bechira Chavshis means no option.
So let's just take Esav and Yaakov. The Eibishter couldn't have chosen Esav. Why not? Then what does that mean? How could you say that the Eibishter couldn't have chosen something else. You're limiting, putting a limit. You're saying there's a gvul. Sure, could have chosen Yaakov, not to.
Ultimately, if you're talking about him, you can't say he can't.
Right, because nimna hanimnois.
So you can't say he can't choose, he can't be. Of course he can. And he's megala this, which is vulnerability. He is megala that this is essential to him. And it can't be any other way. So those expressions that we kind of dismiss and not take seriously, like...
But so I'm saying, but if nimna hanimnois is true, then how can you then say that it can't be any other way? It could be any other way because of nimna hanimnois.
Or, it can't be any other way because nimna hanimnois.
I don't understand.
If you're talking about a very high madrega, then you could be justified in saying, well, you can't limit him to that. But if you're talking about the Eibishter, you can't. There's no can't.
There's no can't.
Limited.
Both ways, you're saying.
Right. Right. So the expression like bein kach u bein kach bonayhem u lahachlifam
Efshar, right.
efshar.
Right, I had this discussion. Yeah, I remember.
So you say, it doesn't mean that.
Yeah. That's a good, I think that's it's a compelling mocker.
But there are many.
Okay.
There's a medrash that says that the melech says to his princess, to his daughter, you're getting married and you're moving away. I can't stop you. Efshi. But then to live without you is also efshi.
Right.
Eini yochel. So eini yochel or...
Right.
So recently I've been asking Yeshiva Bachrim, V'esa eschem al kanfei nesharim. The Eibishter says, you don't notice how devoted I am to you? Like an eagle. And Rashi says, what's the marshal of the eagle?
Carries the babies on the back because it's the highest flying bird.
And therefore...
It's not afraid of any birds taking its babies just from the archers.
From the archers. So he puts the baby on his back that the arrow should hit him and not the baby. Pretty devoted, no?
So where do we find that by the Eibishter?
So the Eibishter says, I do the same. When do you do the same?
Right. I mean, I maybe Alpi Nigla Mamish, you can say maybe it's referring to Anania Kovid receiving the arrows from the Mitzrayim.
And if it is?
It's
So,
not the
what,
Eibishter.
so what's the dogma?
Right. It's a very interesting question.
The eagle is having Mesiras Nefesh and dying for its kid. And what are you allowing your onon?
Right.
What's the dogma?
It's a good question.
Nobody takes it seriously. It's a marshal. So let's make the cheshbon fakert. What is the eagle giving up?
His physical existence, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hurts for a minute and then he's dead.
Right.
David says not going to die,
Right.
which means it will hurt forever.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is, so how does an eagle compare to David? That's how we should be thinking. How does my vulnerability compare to his? So when the Alter Rebbe says the Eibishter gives up Elam Esel Yenim, and he has Tzimtzum, and you can't give up your Taisa. So, well, my Taisa is real. Everything about me is real, everything about him is not. So, no, we've got to change that.
I just wish I understood the Nimna and Nice Sugi a little bit clearer. It's a difficult it's difficult to wrap your head around the Nakuda that you can say the word can't by the Eibishter.
Yeah, so let's try something.
It's a little bit off topic from vulnerability, but I feel like a lot of Bachrim, especially.
So if you learn the Rebbe's understanding of the Rambam right at the beginning, Im yala al hadas shehu einay nimtza. If
Never
it-
achar yochel matzos, yeah.
Right. So the Rebbe says, Im yala al hadas. If you go up to a higher level, and you understand that he is einay matzah, then the whole world is einay matzah too. Bittul olamis. That's a higher level, not a lower level. It's not apicursus. Im yala al hadas shehu einay matzah. What kind of... So that's apicursus. What are you...
So there, basically, any matzah is like a bechina of atzmos or.
Yeah. So there's Metzias Gashmi, Metzias Ruchni, and then Metzias Elokus. So you say, well, certainly the Eibusha doesn't have a Metzias Gashmi, not Tefes Mokim. He also doesn't have a Metzias Ruchni, because that's also a Tzir. What he has is a Metzias Elokus, Eliki. What is that? So Yala al Hadash hu einay motzi means he doesn't have even the Metzias of a Ruchni. What's, for example, a Ruchni?
An idea, right? So the Eibusher can't be, you can't grasp him, you can't articulate Eibusher.
That he's not begeder Chochma.
Right.
But one of the Metzias Ruchni is Etzem. The Etzem is built in the Shtana, built in the Gale, built in the Chalek. The Eibusher you can't say that about the Eibusher. You can't say he's builty anything. So when you say about Etzem, it's builty, okay, then you're not talking about him. Because that's a Metzias Ruchni. The Eibusher is not a Metzias Ruchni. But if you put it in very grobe, simple language, Im yala al hadash hu einay motzi means that he is not a Metzias, not a Metzias Gashmi, not a Metzias Ruchni. But the Rambam just said that you have to know that yesh motzi yishan. In other words, the Eibusher becomes a motzi in order for everything else to exist. That's by choice? Obviously.
Yeah.
So, before he is a Metzias, he chooses. Who chooses?
The Metzias Eliki chooses to become Metzias Ruchni.
And what is a Metzias Eliki?
Metzias Eliki is, it has the bechina of existence, obviously not in the sense of something that's able to be mugdar, but it is a Metzias, it is an isness, whatever, that isn't, you cannot relate to that Metzias in both Gashmistic terms and Ruchnistic terms.
Right. And that's what we mean by les machshava tfisa bei.
Right.
Because we can be tefes Gashmi, we can even be tefes Ruchni. But him, you say Metzias Eliki, but it's not a Metzias. It's einay motzi. And that we don't understand at all. So what do we say? What don't I understand? The Eibusher who wants before he's a Metzias. And that I'll never understand. But at the same time, I now know that his rotzen, if you can call it rotzen, comes before his existence. Before he becomes a motzui, he wants to. Who wants to? Well, that's the Eibusher. Less machshava tfisa bei. But can you really call it rotzen? If he's not even a motzui yet, he certainly doesn't have rotzen yet.
So I don't know if this is what this would say, but the Rambam talks about the idea of creating midas. The Eibusher creates the midah.
After he's a motzui.
Oh, that's after he's a matzah. The Rambam doesn't talk about the bechina of einay matzah.
Right. So it's like saying,
So maybe he has like the Metzias Elikis version of Ratzon. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's why Nisava HaKadosh Baruch Hu Liyes Lei Dira B'Tachtenim is before he became a Motzi.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he became a Motzi, and that's why Kol HaNimtza Eine Nimtza Ela Amitas Hi Motzi.
But could the Bechina of Einei Motzoi have chosen not to have the Taiva? But via Zeikim and Zagan, that idea of Einei Yachel, or impossibility by any Darga of the Eibishter.
Yeah, so it's not Eine Yachol because of some rule. It's Eine Yachol because this is him.
But that's a Hagdara. You're being Magid Eibishter, saying that this is the Eibishter, then there's something the Eibishter is not. You're saying the Eibishter comes with like a certain seer from the beginning of his existence.
So obviously, you have to change your opinion of the Dira B'Tachtenim. If he is Nisava a Dira B'Tachtenim, then the Dira B'Tachtenim is not what you think it is.
What do you mean?
It's not a Gvul, and it's not if that's his taiva, then it is as bilti mugbal as he is. So let's start with mitzvahs. The Eibishter chose mitzvahs. Could have been different? Of course not.
But that's my question. Maybe it could have been different. We can't say by the Eibishter it couldn't have been something.
Because it limits him.
Because it limits it.
But
And also because you're being mitzayir, you're forcing him into certain...
If you think that mitzvahs are a tzir. That's where our mistake is. Mitzvahs are not a tzir.
Saying the Ratzon for mitzvahs is not a tzir.
That's right, it's him. That's what called the Ratzon Elyon. So...
But you're still saying that he is... Okay, you're saying it's not a tzir. But it is, though. I'm saying if you're saying that it's this and not
it's like,
that...
Whatever he is, which less mashava tfisabe, that's what mitzvahs are. Mitzvahs are him. So you're not putting a limit on him. You're telling me that there's no limit on mitzvahs. That mitzvah is not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm. And you can't... And it couldn't... It's not possible for the Eibishter to have not wanted the mitzvahs.
That's right. So now you have to say, so mitzvahs are not a means to an end, to fix up the world through a mitzvah, which then would make sense that mitzvahs betelus lasud love because you finished with them already.
Right, that much we... I think Chassidus is pretty clear on those.
Right. So you say, Erucha me eretz midah, rechava miniyam. The very mitzvahs are much bigger. It's not good enough. So you say, no, they're Evorim de Malka. Okay, it's a little better. But Evorim is still. So Chassidus says, no, it's Mushrish Ba'atzmus. Which means it is not what you think it is. It's him. So our problem is not with the Eibishter. Our problem is what we think of a mitzvah. You think a mitzvah is man groma and... It's him. Mele, he can't not be him.
So maybe Mushrash Basmus means that the Ratzon is an Atmos. That it's not some side Ratzon.
So if it's Atmos, then it's...
But it's a Ratzon of Atmos. Atmos decided was Beicher to have that Ratzon.
Then it is also Atmos. You can't introduce a foreign object into Atmos. So if you say this is Atmos, then it is Etzem. And if it's Etzem, how can it not have been?
Because the Etzem of Etzem is deeper than the Ratzon of Etzem. And at the point of Etzem, if we're even creating such a term, there could have been another... I'm just playing the devil's advocate. There could have been another Bechira going in a different direction.
The only thing that you could say is that in Atzmus, there can still be levels. not options. In Atzmus, there's, I don't know, like you're saying, more Atzmus than Atzmus. You know, like Emes and Emes La'amita.
Right.
So the Eibishter has an Atzmizdike Bechira in mitzvahs and an Atzmizdike Bechira in Yidden. Is there a difference?
Between the two. The Bechira and mitzvahs and the Bechira and Yidden.
Right.
Could you say that the Bechira was that the Yidden do the mitzvahs?
But it's all in Atzmus, so
Right.
they come together
You're
simultaneously.
saying this idea of Yisrael Kadmon LaTorah and...
So the Rebbe makes a whole Masechta out of this. That it's in Atzmus Gufa, you can have Kodma, not,
Right.
it's a big subject and it's heavy duty, but
Right.
but yes, that's... So again, what does it mean, Bechira Chavshi? Bechira Chavshi means nothing needs to make me want it, I already want it. Did you ever not? And you have violation. So, what the Rebbe particularly is saying is that if you really understand the Eibishter, then you have to change your mind about Yidden. If every Yid is Bavas Einei, then you don't know what a Jew is. Then you say, how can it be the Eibishter doesn't have an eye? Hey, come on. You have to change your opinion of a Yid. And radically. Even concerning anti-Semitism. If you say to the world, they were all the nations, the Eibishter chose the Yid. Well, they could have chosen you, but you blew it because you were killing people and we were studying. Avram was learning Torah and your grandfather was swinging from trees. So you lost the contest.
So the Medrash seems to say with the whole...
Yeah. But that's hard to swallow. What the Rebbe is saying is, what if it's a contest? You lose a contest, you win a contest. There was no contest.
Bechira and Yidden was nothing to do with how we behaved or didn't behave. It was Bechira and Etzem. It's the whole...
So what does that mean?
That means that...
Say it in English. What does that mean?
The way I understand it is that nothing other than the Yid himself caused Hashem to be Bechira and Yid. In other words, a Bechira that's not Chavshi is that there's a Maila in one thing over the other. And the Bechina of Etzem, there is no Maila in Yidden over Goyim. The Hainu, something that you can point to, right? Because at that point, so to speak, there's no Bechira in mitzvahs yet. So that's what Haman was trying to get to in Bechina of Geirel, and that's where we reach on Yom Kippur with the Geirel by the Shteizim. But so the fact that Hashem chose Yidden on that Madrega is not totally on the Maila of the Yid. It's just the Eibishter chose us. I said it was a central connection that a Yid has with Hashem that there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to explain. It's a fact.
So isn't that like saying there was no choice?
But I just want to say the fact that Hashem, it's interesting. I mean, the fact that Hashem chose us
Means there was a choice.
There was a choice, and we don't know. Maybe we don't know why Hashem chose Yidden. There's no reason why Hashem chose Yidden.
Which means there's no choice.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
But that is the ultimate touch.
Yeah.
Bechira Chavshi means free of choice.
It's just it's hard to admit that there's a certain point where the Eibishter was compelled or didn't have a choice to do something.
Yeah, but that
I think that the only thing that's missing is really a more, because what do we know about the Eibishter? We know nothing about the Eibishter. We know what Chassidus says about the Eibishter.
Right.
We know what the Rebbe says about the Eibishter. So that's all we need is let's try and find the clearest makar possible in Chassidus, because we can talk from today to tomorrow what we think about.
No, we're not. We're not talking. We're talking about what it says and what
Yeah.
Chassidus, and particularly the Rebbe.
Yeah, obviously.
But the danger here is this. No matter how much we understand that mitzvah is important, it's blah, 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 it's even negeya in atzmus, it's mushish in atzmus, but ultimately he doesn't need it. That is a dangerous, not kosher statement. In other words,
No,
if you go up high enough,
what it means need, yeah.
if you go up high enough, there are no mitzvahs. You're not allowed to say that. That means you don't understand mitzvahs. It's just not acceptable. So we don't know, young people say, we don't know the highest of all levels, but on that highest level, nothing matters. So what are you saying? Torah and mitzvahs are just a secondary detail.
So im sodakto is just the way we do it. Is that what is it? How does everyone explain im sodakto?
So the first thing is, when somebody said to the Rebbe, how can you say that it's negei and atzmos and tzedakta matitanle? In some way, that actually proves it's not a contradiction. Like nitno hamitzvos elo
I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the Eibush doesn't gain anything from mitzvahs. Im tzedakta matitanle, right? And the fact that he still wants to do mitzvahs is the biggest raya that it is negei in etzem, and there's no reason compelling him to do it.
Right. It's not tzidkis. It's not a reason.
Yeah.
And the same with nitna mitzvahs elo l'tzada bemes habriyos. So somebody said to the Rebbe, doesn't that show that he doesn't need it? So how does that show that? You're telling me that he gave us the mitzvahs l'tzada bemes, so that's what he needs.
Mm-hmm.
How did you remove him from the picture?
Right. Part of his ratzin, Tara's type is for us to be mitzura.
If that's the case.
Right.
If that's the case.
Right. I mean,
So you're just saying that this is what he needs.
right.
So he needs to elevate you.
Mm-hmm.
But because he gave it for you means you eliminate him?
Mm-hmm.
How did you eliminate him?
Mm-hmm. Right. So the only point where I'm just not so glad on is this nekuda where we talking can say that the Eibishter couldn't have chosen another way, because it seems to me that you're making a tzir, you're putting a tzir on the Eibishter. You're kind of painting him in a certain picture. It's not
Okay. So
which is what you just did. By saying he has no tzir, you're just mitzayir. By saying he has no tzir.
no. By saying that he has no tzir, you're saying that he's hiyuli. Now he has the potential to be any tzir. No tzir means all tzir. One tzir doesn't mean all tzir. You know what I'm saying in a way?
so again, if you consider mitzvahs a tzir,
It seems to be because mitzvahs aren't averis.
mitzvahs means Avedis also. The Aveda is negei and atzmos.
No, I mean what I mean
Or
is
it's negotiable.
like putting on tefillin. Sorry, let's yeah.
Mitzvahs aseh, mitzvahs lo aseh. But here also, Chassidus says, mali mitzvahs aseh, mali mitzvahs lo aseh. How can? What does that mean? That's only true if it comes from atzmos. In atzmos, mali mitzvahs. But once you're talking about mitzvahs as mitzvah, yeah, then they're opposites. This is an aseh, this is a aseh. So everything leads back to the idea that he is Torah and mitzvahs. That's what Eibishter means. Is that a limit? No, it's not a limit. Torah and mitzvahs are obligable.
Mm-hmm.
So it is difficult to.
I mean, and again, once again, like it could be that this seer is true about the Eibush. I think what people struggle with is just I want to see Chassidus say that in a clearer way than that's all.
It says it very clearly accept that our problem is not so much with the Eibishter. Our problem is with
What we've been
mitzvahs.
taught about the Eibishter.
No, about
Oh,
mitzvahs. For some reason, we have this impression mitzvahs are disposable. It's a mistake in our concept of mitzvah. That's why the Rebbe has a whole hezbollah. Why one of the Gimel Ikrim is that Hazes Leitahi Muchlefes. The Eibishter will never. What do you forget it? If the Eibishter changes his mind and he says, "Don't put on tefillin," I won't put on tefillin. Isn't that more of a Kabbalah soil than to say, "No, he's never going to change it"? Let him change it. Whatever he changes it to, I'll do it. Tells me to eat chazir, I'll eat chazir. So why is it an ikir in das that leitahi muchlefes? So the Rebbe explains, because if you think that it could be muchlefes, then you don't know what a mitzvah is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a shopping list. One morning, the Eibishter woke up and said, tefillin.
Mm-hmm.
And next week he'll say, okay, genug mit the tefillin.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have no idea what tefillin is.
Mm-hmm.
So really, our problem is not so much with the Eibishter. It's what we think is optional. And same thing with Yidden. Could have been somebody else. So maybe one day it will be. That's dangerous. And the real cause and root of anti-Semitism is because everybody else knows that it can't be any of, and that bothers them. Maybe you were chosen, okay, so but next week maybe I'll get chosen. No, I'll never be chosen because you didn't know. Well, that's not fair. That's the anti-Semitism. So, what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? We're not going to change our mind about the Eibishter. The difference is going to be in Yidden and in mitzvahs. We'll discover what we never knew about mitzvahs and what we never knew about Yidden. Then we'll understand the Eibishter.
I just learned the mimer from, I think, that's a mimer, Kemet Seiska, I read in the flies. It says there's two I read in the flies. There's that Nisim Shalamaylam Teva, we're going to understand the mechanism of the Giluyim that went into the mechanism into carrying out that ness, and then there's the Nisim Shalamaylam Teva. We're also going to have the idea of Aren the flies that we're going to recognize, like the idea of Gilui Atzmos, which in itself is a very crazy idea because Atzmosism is essentially higher than Gilui.
But again, you have to be careful. You're talking about a madrege called Atzmos, or you're talking about him.
Him.
Him is not a madrege too high to be revealed.
Right, but it's Ein Habalanas Makar B'Nisai. We're experiencing
That's on a lower level.
That's a lower level. That's not.
Giluyim and Hester, and that's all in Eid, not in him.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't say about him that it can't come to Gilui. The madrege called Etzem can't come to Gilui. Not him. I think that's where most people make the mistake. They're applying the description of Etzem to him. It doesn't apply.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like Memala Kol Alman, Seviv Kol Alman, Etzem, Atzmos. No, Atzmos is here, just as much as. So you can't include him on the scale, on the ladder of him.
So what's the level of etzem that's discussed in Chassidus? What?
Etzem ha'od.
Uh-huh. You never have the discussion in the Rebbe's Torah, especially about him.
Yes, only by the Rebbe.
Right.
That's what the Rebbe added. That there's a completely different topic here,
Mm-hmm.
and that is him. He who wants a dira b'tachtena.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a madrege. It's not higher than seviv. It's not higher. Not lower. It's not higher. It's him. So high and low, Gili and Helam Hester, that doesn't apply to him. We're talking about him. That's the...
Thank you very, very much.
how is Teras Chabad the hafotza of mayones of the Baal Shem Tov? You see any resemblance? This is hafotza mayones of the Baal Shem Tov? Yeah?
For sure. Absolutely.
How?
What do you mean?
Where did the Baal Shem Tov say any of this? The Baal Shem Tov said, there's an Eibush there. And everybody thought, wow, that's a very high madrega. And the Alter Rebbe came along and said, no, it's not a madrega. I'll tell you about madregas. The Baal Shem Tov was talking about him. And that's why the Baal Shem Tov loved Anoshim Pshutim. Because by an Ish Poshet, when you say Eibush, you mean him. Not a madrege before the Tzimtzum. Yeah? So that's why the real Hafotzas HaMayonos is the Rebbe's. The Rebbe brought it full circle back to what the Baal Shem Tov first started.